Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Happy Ukrainian Independence Day for all of you that are Ukrainian out there. As you know, our company, Cobblestone Freeway Tours, is very much connected to the Ukrainian community, and we started by offering tours to Ukraine. We have an office in Ukraine, and that was the beginning of it all. And today is Independence Day. They're celebrating 29 years of Ukrainian independence, and we have a special guest today, Shane Gibson, who is the artistic director of the Trezub Ukrainian Dancers of Calgary and an old friend. Shane, welcome to our Monday video cast.
Thanks for having me, Vince. It's great.
So let's just take a sec here, and we're going to both share and like this link, because we were told that if you do this right off the bat, more people might see it. So give us 1 sec as we do the obligatory click, like, share to our respective pages. And then we'll chat a little bit more. How does this work here? Share now. There we go. Okay, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, Shane, I don't know about you, but for me, Ukrainian independence is something really interesting because when I was growing up as a kid, maybe this was the same for you, but for me, Ukraine was like Neverland. It was a country that didn't exist. I didn't know anyone that was from there. You couldn't actually go there. It just didn't exist. It was a magical place. I learned about Hutsuls and Cossacks and did Ukrainian dancing and spoke this mysterious language. But when Ukrainian independence happened, all of a sudden it was like this country appeared that you could visit and travel to. What was your experience like?
I think it was a little bit different for me. I was blessed that my parents decided to send me to Ukraine when I was 10. So in 1985, I got to see Ukraine in its full communist state. And then, then I traveled again in 1990, right before independence happened. And then I had went again in 92, right after. So it was interesting watching the progression over the many years. And so I think I understood sort of how much more independence meant to Ukrainian people. I think once you've been with your family standing in line for food for multiple hours, and sometimes you get food, sometimes you don't, I think it just meant a whole bunch more to me.
That's fascinating. I didn't know you had been to Ukraine so many times before and around the beginning of independence. So you were 10 years old when you first went. Which part of Ukraine is your family from?
My family is just north of Chernivtsi, right off the Dniester River.
Right.
Yeah.
For the audience that don't know, Shane and I are old friends. We've danced in the Shumka Dancers together for many years and traveled to Ukraine together many times. And we'll get to that in a sec. But I remember we've been to Bukovina together, and I remember you going off to visit your family and whatnot. And most recently, I think you had quite an extraordinary trip where you rented a car and drove all around Ukraine last year.
Oh my goodness! Everyone told me don't do it. I'm so happy I did it. I actually did it twice. I did it once in June and once in August, and like such an amazing experience. First of all, you learn how to avoid things. I've never been passed by my hubcap before, so like it's super interesting. I found roads that don't really exist. So
because you were following GPS, you didn't have a guide.
Yeah, total GPS, and like. Sometimes the road just doesn't exist anymore, but it was just such a great experience.
Well, good for you. And you speak Ukrainian enough that you can get by and stuff like that. But
right.
I've never really recommended to people to rent a car and drive around Ukraine unless they're quite comfortable in the situation. I mean, that's why we exist as a tour company, to offer people the comfort of not having to worry about trying to figure it out on your own, right?
Yeah, it was. There was some long days in the car, and perhaps wasn't the smartest idea, but it was kind of fun.
Did you ever feel in danger at all? Like I've never felt in danger in Ukraine. How did you feel being out there on your own?
Do you know what? I've never been in danger, but I have many stories from when I was like 17 years old and the things that I did that were pretty stupid. That looking back, I'm like, oh my God, that was probably not the best thing to do. But
yeah, you gotta be safe no matter where you travel.
That's right.
Shane, as artistic director of the Trezub Ukrainian Dancers in Calgary, you created a really interesting show that ties back to independence here. The name of the show was called Heroyam Slava, which is the famous response to the Ukrainian call, which is Slava Ukraini. The answer is Heroyam Slava. Slava Ukraini means glory to Ukraine. Right. And the response is glory to the heroes. And it's become a proud rallying cry throughout Ukraine, and especially significant on Independence Day. Tell us a little bit about that show that you created, and what was your inspiration behind it?
On many of the cobblestone tours that I did with the workshop tour, I got to meet a bunch of dancers and got to hear some stories. And in one summer, right before actually I started my position here at Trezub, I stayed at Hotel Dnipro in Kyiv, and they have many wounded soldiers that would come into that hotel, because that's where they would stay during their medical treatments.
Wounded soldiers from the Eastern Front, where the conflict still simmers. Yes.
So I got into a couple conversations, and got to know some of the soldiers and got to hear their stories, and I was intrigued, and then it had me thinking. I was wondering why is it in Western media that it's not even back page news? It just disappeared from news altogether, and
right.
And that started getting me thinking. Now that I have this opportunity as an artistic director of a dance company, then perhaps that's right. Arts can maybe not always just tell a pretty little tale. Sometimes we have to get a little bit more into that human experience and delve into maybe the darker sides of a culture, and and ultimately I think at the end of the stories is there's still hope. There's always hope for Ukraine, and that was something that I wanted to to show and bring this to light and let people in the West know that this is still going on. This is not, just.
Well, especially today, 29 years into Ukraine's independence. Next year will be 30 years, but it's an independence struggle that has gone on really for centuries. And as we know, with democracy in general, you have to constantly be vigilant and constantly be stoking the flames of democracy, and making sure people are paying attention to and don't become passive, right? But
that's right.
Yeah. So how did the dancers and the community in Calgary respond to the idea?
You know what? I think it's a type of show that hasn't really been seen in before. I mean, there's been adaptations where, Virsky did a Choho Verba Place, where the Cossack goes off to war, and we're talking 15th century type storylines,
right?
And so I had a little bit of inspiration to help me guide me down that path, but making this contemporary issue and bringing in a multimedia type presentation into the show, I think it made it a little more real for people. I think it really hit home, and so audiences it was very well received, and people appreciated how we approach the topic, and then the dancers just felt extremely proud to be able to be part of that show and part of that message, and then it was significantly more important to them after we toured this show in Ukraine.
Yeah, it was a very powerful experience, I think, to perform it in Ukraine. Do you feel the dancers have changed after their experience performing in Ukraine?
I think the fairy tale Ukraine that you spoke of at the beginning is something that all Canadians have. All
yes.
Canadian Ukrainians have, and until you've been to the country and you've seen like what a beautiful, not just country, like physically very beautiful country, but beautiful people and beautiful history, and I think it just meant a whole bunch more to them, and I think passion is just much more evident than it has been in the past.
Well, and I think it's extra special with Trezub for a certain reason, that originally Trezub was actually supposed to tour Ukraine in 2014. And of course, 2014 was the year that the revolution in Ukraine happened and the ensuing conflict began. And so that tour was canceled. And so people were very upset that they didn't have that opportunity to go and have this great experience. So to come back many years later and not only get a chance to tour Ukraine, but do it with a show that spoke to that struggle for freedom that Ukrainians have for centuries been working on, it must have been very powerful.
I just think in so many ways there's just such a good fit, and the cities that Cobblestone helped us choose to perform this show was just great choices on where we could perform this show. So, being in Kropivnitsky, basically the birthplace of Ukrainian stage dance, and then, heading into Ivano-Frankivsk, where, many families that settled Western Canada are from that area. And so a lot of family members of dancers came to see the show, and, just a very positive experience for everyone.
So you performed in which cities? Kropivnitsky, Ivano-Frankivsk, and at the International Ukrainian Dance and Culture Festival in Lviv.
That's right, yeah.
And you mentioned Kropivnitsky is the center of Ukrainian dance in Ukraine. I've mentioned that before too. Why is that?
Do you know what? It's so interesting. Like, we just never hear the stories, and the more times I go, the more times you listen and you hear things that you just stick with you. And when Lysenko, he was basically the catalyst of putting Ukrainian dance on stage into the opera Lest Ukrainka, and when that was the very first time that Ukrainian dance had been on stage, at least that was in record. And I think that was a huge stepping point of being able to take a folk dance and popularize it, and and I think it helped, with the just dancing in the city of Kropivnitsky, and perhaps even on the same stage as where that all occurred was just a magnificent.
Well, Kropivnitsky, just so everyone knows, used to be called Kirovohrad. It was recently, in the last 2 years, the name was changed. So if you're confused, Kropivnitsky and Kirovohrad is the same city, and there's a museum dedicated to Ukrainian dance in there. So that's someplace we've been together to visit, and hopefully other groups will get a chance to go and visit there in the future. Shane, I think this would be a great time to show a little clip of the experience that the dancers had. As you know, but not everyone knows, we filmed your tour, and we've been working steadily on putting it all together to create a video, and nobody's seen any of the footage yet. So I think this is a great time for a sneak preview. If we can cut to that clip, I think people will really enjoy this.
I've always dreamed of dancing in Ukraine.
And it happened last summer, dancing with Trezub, my dance family. The experience has changed me in so many ways.
I've grown a lot in my dancing, my ideas about Ukraine, and it was really special to travel from Kiev across the Carpathian Mountains and actually perform on the Lviv Opera Theatre stage, and to do all of this with my dance family, Trezub.
Trezub is family, and being with family in Ukraine, dancing together, the long bus rides and vodka shots. By the way, vodka is so good in Ukraine. Just going to the birthplace of Ukrainian dance, it's changed me.
So there you go. There's a sneak preview of the film that's about to come. And I think it's going to be entered into the Calgary International Film Festival coming up soon. So
that's what we're hoping, that they accept us. So yes, we're excited.
So let's stay tuned for that. But that was a sneak preview. Does that take you back to the travel experience that you had?
No, so many great memories. It was just an amazing time. Getting to share it with dancers that I spend so many hours in studio and in preparation for is just great. And that I think that was my 28th time to Ukraine, and watching other people have that experience for the very first time was just unbelievable. So
yeah, and they remembered most of it. There wasn't that much vodka, just for the sake of the viewership. That was just a one time only. You went to Ukraine 28 times. Wow, Shane.
Yeah.
Wow. That's lots. Good for you. I that resonates with me because I've been to Ukraine many, many times. People say, why don't you go see somewhere else in the world? and I do. I see other places too. But I feel like there's something about learning one place in depth And every time I go back, I still learn something new. I see something different. I experience the people. I've made friendships there. And, if I want to go just sit on a beach or something like that, I can do that somewhere else. But I go to Ukraine for the culture, for the people.
Well, I think what's really interesting is when you learn one culture extremely well, and you learn. I think what ends up happening is you understand the similarities between that culture and other cultures around the world, and it kind of brings everything closer together. Where, now because you have this in-depth information, you have that ability to understand, maybe the struggles that other cultures have gone through, or that the type of thing. So. And then also just becoming Ukrainian dance instructor or even dancer in Canada is not the easiest thing to do. And we kind of have this patchwork of training. And, if you want to, there's not going to be very many masters of Ukrainian dance left in Ukraine, fairly soon. I mean, people just getting older. I think it's just super, super important that as many of us get there as many times as possible to try pick up as close to original folk source material as we can while it's still available.
Yeah, that's really true. Shane, you and I have both had the chance to go and study with different dance masters around Ukraine. And you're right, that older generation of people are disappearing. And the government doesn't sponsor dance the way it used to be sponsored. And so it's becoming... knowledge that's disappearing unless we go over there and capture it. Luckily we have cameras and videos,
right,
and try and keep a lot. But there's something about learning from a video, which is not the same as learning.
It's not the same. It's having the artistic director throw his arm over your shoulder, take you into a corner, give you a little bit of extra information and a little bit of encouragement, and then publicly yell at you. I mean, no, so like. It's great. Like they appreciate so much the passion that we have for their culture, for that dance form, and I think it's such a huge, powerful experience to have that happen.
We have a question from the audience from our main man in Lviv, Kirill Kozachuk. He's asking, how did the people in Lviv, in Kropyvnytsky, how did they react to your show?
John, I had several conversations afterwards, and some by actual people that I hold very dear as mentors. People like Vasil Bossi, who is ballet master for Prolysok Ensemble, and he was very touched and thought that, he had some technical corrections that he thought we should make, but
of course,
no, I mean that's all of us dance instructors, but his. He was very touched by the artistic message, and Andriy Popov, who's the artistic director of that theater in Kropyvnytsky, him and I have been in contact exploring a possible collaboration between Trezub and his theater, because he was very impressed with how much passion the dancers brought into the theater, and just it was so that kind of feedback was really, really great to get. And we almost needed security at the front of the stage just to keep the babas from running on stage with flowers in the middle of dances. So it must have been received okay.
Storming babas, my God.
It was great.
Yeah, and the dancers must have been moved by the reaction of the audience. Like there's a relationship between the audience and the dancers that happens at the end of a concert, that you're not going to get from a Canadian audience. Canadian audiences are very gracious, but maybe not as expressive as a Ukrainian audience. Would you agree with me there?
I think, yeah, especially when it comes to like the just your repertoire dances. I think that's for sure true. Heroyam Slava, I think regardless whether you're in Ukraine or when we were in Canada, I think the reaction was very similar, where we should have branded tissues and sold them because it was a powerful show, and it was difficult to watch, and difficult because it's the truth, and not every Ukrainian dance has ribbons and hopak smiles, and
yeah. Well, there's a difference between, I think, Ukrainian folk dances and then using Ukrainian steps to tell a story which is more like a contemporary way. So instead of doing just traditional dances, a lot of people like yourself are taking the art form and trying to tell different kinds of stories, almost like a ballet. So I think that's a really neat approach, and that's less common in Ukraine. So I think they might have. How did they react to that?
Do you know what, I heard that same comment, and they started to question why that's not common in Ukraine.
Right.
And you know, and there's a lot of beautiful Ukrainian folk stories that I think are just waiting to be told, and there's a lot of tragedies, which is unfortunate, but I mean it's part of a culture, it's part of art, it's part of life, which I think is important to express as well. So
and to wrap up your trip around Ukraine, you guys performed at the International Festival in Lviv. What was that like for everybody?
It was like a dream come true. I don't think many people in their Ukrainian dance careers will ever be able to dance in an opera house like Lviv. I mean, it's just a legendary opera house, and just an amazing experience. And the audience in that theater was just eating it up. They loved every single minute of every single count of every single group that was up there, whether it was a choir or it was a pop singer or a dance company. Like, it's just an amazing experience for everyone. So
yeah, I thought it was really neat also for different dance groups from around the world to come together and show their support for Ukraine all together. I remember people in the audience in Ploshcha Rynok, in the old square of Lviv, asking me, like, these dancers are all from Lviv, right? I said, no, they're all from Canada and Australia and other places around the world. There was a group there from Brazil, and they said, really? They're not from Ukraine? I said, no, they're all from around the world. And they were really touched, the fact that Ukrainians all around the world are doing dance, and there's hundreds of groups all around the world. It's phenomenal.
You know, and I completely agree, and I think that's how this I love that we're talking about this on Independence Day, because I think it's moving for them, because Ukrainians it is very easy to celebrate their cultures in other places of the world. And you know, so I always encourage other Canadians, Ukrainians that I speak to, and tell them that it's really easy to be a festival Ukrainian, where you go to the parties and you say your budmos and you do a kolomeka or two, and then that makes you Ukrainian. But you know, it's important to understand, like, the whole package. And so, you know, we're so lucky that the diaspora in other parts of the world, you know, are able to celebrate their ethnic roots with so much freedom.
Oh, yes, we should never take our independence and our democracy and our freedom for granted. That is a great message to wrap up our interview on. In honor of Ukraine's Independence Day celebrations today, Shane Gibson, Artistic Director of Trezub, an old friend, thank you for joining us. And I hope you get to go to Ukraine another 28 times, and I hope Trezub gets to go as well. If you want to see a snippet of Trezub performing a little bit on the opera theater stage. This year, as you know, unfortunately, we couldn't have the festival. It would have been our 5th anniversary of the International Ukrainian Dance and Culture Festival in Lviv. But what we are going to do is have a tribute concert, and we decided to do it not in the middle of summer when people are a little bit tired of maybe being on Zoom, but we're going to do it on Sunday evening, September 27th. It's going to be a tribute concert of the best moments of the festival in Lviv. So you get to for sure see a bit of Trezub on that day. So tune into that. And stay tuned to Trezub's upcoming film about their journey back to the homeland. So thanks, Shane. Any closing remarks you want to throw in here?
Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava. That's a great chant. For everyone who didn't know what that meant, Slava Ukraini means glory to Ukraine. Heroyam Slava is the response, which means glory to the heroes. And that's a really moving thing to say. It's also a really great way to practice your Ukrainian language. I remember first learning it myself many years ago at Krayuvka.
Oh.
Yes. Do you know that restaurant?
Been several times.
Yeah. Why don't you tell everybody what's Krayuvka a little bit? We got an extra minute here.
Yeah, you know, it's a little bit of a hidden gem in Lviv, and it's a little restaurant where it's a hidden door, and you need to say Slava Ukraini or Heroyam Slava to get in the door, and it's a tribute to the People's Army of Ukraine. It's a little bit of a bunker, and great food, great drinks, and a little bit of a show.
Yeah, it's quite entertaining.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Hogan's Heroes, you know, it's like a Ukrainian Hogan's Heroes. But it's a fun way that they're telling the story of the history of Ukraine and the struggle for independence and the struggle for freedom in a modern, fun way. So everybody's finding unique ways to tell this story for Ukraine, and Ukraine has a lot of stories to tell. And I hope we get to do it for many more years. So thanks again, Shane.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thanks, Trezub. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.